Welcome, everyone, to Dad Talk Live. And tonight we are being joined by writer Nick Morris, who I was just telling has an amazing horror collection behind him. Nick, thank you so much for being here with us. How you doing?
Doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for being on our show. And just to talk about all that awesome horror paraphernalia you have in the background, do you have like a room designated as your horror room?
Yeah, it's kind of like the deepest, darkest corner of the basement where all of my stuff winds up.
Well, that's where
So,
I do this show from the deepest, darkest corner of my basement, having three
right,
kids
right.
and a wife who've been pushed to our
You,
little corner. So, how long have you
you
been a
got it.
horror fan?
Geez, I've been into horror really since I was a kid. Going back to the VHS days, right? And I was always kind of drawn to that section of the video store because they had the coolest cover art.
Absolutely. And was writing something that you were always passionate about?
Writing was it was something I was always interested in. And obviously I'm a big horror fan. I'm a big movie fan in general, and have been all my life. And so writing a screenplay is something that has always been on my radar and something that I would have liked to have tried, but really, like I live in Atlantic, Canada. I'm about as far away from Los Angeles as you can get on this continent. So it wasn't until the kind of the proliferation of social media
Hmm.
where I realized I can use this to promote my work and make some connections and stuff. So that's really when I started to get serious about it, when Twitter and all those things started to get big.
Now, when you started out as a writer, I mean, what were your aspirations? You wanted to go into, author, write books, or was it, known to you from the beginning that writing stories for movies is what you wanted to do?
Yeah, horror movies all the way.
Well, that's great. That's great. Now, do you remember now, Becky? Okay, that is your screenplay. You wrote it. Did you write it alone, or did you have a co-writer help you?
I wrote the original script for Becky alone, and after it was picked up, and the directors Kerry Murnion and John Malott came on board shortly thereafter. They my contracted rewrites were finished at that point, and they had some writers that they wanted to work with to kind of execute their changes,
Yeah,
after
yeah.
they came on board. That's when Ruckus and Lane Sky came on board as writers as well to do revisions.
So, we have a lot of aspiring writers who watch this show all over the world. Man, there are a lot of people who love to write, tell stories. So, you wrote Becky, the screenplay for a movie, and we're going to get to the movie in a little bit. How does one go about trying to get that script picked up? What did you do to try to get Becky picked up?
There's yeah, there's no one way, right? Everybody's path is different. For me, I went once I finished the script. Originally, it was called "There Was a Little Girl,"
Hmm.
based on the after the nursery rhyme that's in the film. Um, but I submitted that script to a screenwriting blog called Script Shadow, and Script Shadow, at least at the time, they still do some, but not as much. They used to have what they called amateur offering
Hmm.
weekends, where the the guy that runs the blog, Carson, would select. You'd send in people would send in their scripts, and he would choose five scripts that he spoke to him or he felt were strong, and post them. And
Wow.
then they have a pretty robust community there, the community could read as much or as little of the scripts as they wanted and cast their vote. And at the end of the weekend, the script with the most votes gets featured the following weekend with a big review and all of that. So my script won the weekend and was featured the following weekend. And Carson didn't love it, but thankfully there was a producer reading it. It caught his attention, and he did love it. And he reached out to me within a couple of days, I think, of the review being posted.
You see, that's an awesome story because people think you got to know someone in Hollywood, but no,
Right.
and that's aspiring for a lot of writers out there who are just trying to catch a break. That you didn't know submitting this screenplay to this blog was going to lead to a movie.
No.
I mean, looking back on it, I mean, what were your feelings as you saw the potential from the blog to getting that call from the producer? Explain to us what you felt. You're like, holy shit, this can really happen.
Yeah, it was a huge surprise, and everything about Becky has surprised me from the very beginning up until right now. It's I knew that it was a popular blog, and it was a popular website, and it got lots of traffic, and had some industry eyeballs and some producers on it. So, and it's free to submit. It's not like a
Yeah.
contest where you have to pay. So I don't think they used to do that every weekend. I don't think they still do. I think it's more rare now, but they still do that sort of thing a few times a year. I think there's a horror focused one coming right up for Halloween, actually.
So when did you actually write Becky? How long ago?
I wrote Becky in 2017.
Okay, that's not
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. So from the time that I sold the script in 2017 to the time cameras were rolling was about 2 years.
Not bad
We
at all.
started to shoot in 2019. Yeah, and it feels like forever when you're so far away from everything and just waiting for updates and waiting for things to happen. But the reality is that that was pretty fast.
So the screenplay is amazing. Great work, by the way.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I love the screenplay. I love the story. There are a lot of undertones in Becky with the sort of white supremacists side of
Mhm.
it, the Aryan Nation, and then you have this 13-year-old girl who is forced by the circumstances that happen to become this badass and surprise everybody. What was your inspiration to putting this story together?
I wanted to, I kind of wanted to explore the idea that everybody has this sort of monster inside of them that thankfully 90-95% of us never have to tap into, and but under the circumstances, I think it's there in everyone, and even the most unsuspecting you know people you can think of, it exists, and
Yeah.
under the if they're pushed far enough, then it can it can rear its ugly head.
And what brought in for you, like the Aryan Nation white supremacist factor for the screenplay?
So in the original version of my script, the villains in it were just, they were bad guys. They were escaped convicts, career criminals. Horrible, just generally horrible people. And it was actually the producer that bought the script from me suggested that that was his biggest thing. His only real note was the characterization of the villains. He wanted them to have a little more something, a little more flavor, I think he called it.
Yeah.
So, and neo Nazis, that was his suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I rewrote the script, and I don't know anything about Nazis, but I did my best to write the recharacterize the villains, particularly Dominic, the leader,
Yeah,
as this neo-Nazi character. Um,
exactly.
yeah, and it really worked out because it makes them that much more detestable, right?
Oh yeah,
And and for in order for the audience to get on board with the unholy amounts of ass that Becky has to kick, and the things that she does, which are pretty gruesome. You've really got to hate those bad guys, right? And
yeah.
you've really got to want to see them get what's coming to them. And so it definitely improved. It did improve the script, making that change for sure.
Now you brought up gruesome, and the film has a lot of bloody, gory parts to it. Was that a part of the screenplay, or is that something the producers, directors did after they bought the script from you?
That was there. That was always there from the very beginning. That was I knew I wanted to take it to kind of an extreme place, and go as crazy and as gruesome as I could, but still the kills in it and the things that she does, they have to be feasible
A 13-year-old girl.
for a 13-year-old girl to pull off, right? So it was actually a lot of fun to try and imagine different things that she could ways she could exact her revenge on these guys.
Now, I don't want to spoil the movie for those who have not seen it, but we see Becky go through this transformation. She's upset that her dad is going to remarry. She lost her mom. And then the
Mm-hmm.
events happen with the bad guys. And she finds herself doing stuff that I don't even think she, as a 13-year-old girl, realized was capable of doing. And then you get to the third act, and you sort of see like a switch flipped in her all the way through the ending that she's totally okay with it. Give us your take on that. And when you were writing it, what was going through Becky's mind? And is this a psychopath in the making?
Yeah, it's I didn't intend when I wrote it for Becky's obviously troubled and she's got some issues, but I don't. She wasn't supposed to be a psychopath out of the gate or anything like that. Like we were talking about before. I think that monster, that beast, is inside everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a moment in the film where she's trapped in her treehouse with Buddy waiting outside, and she you can see it in her, and it's a testament to Lulu Wilson's performance. You can
Yeah.
see it in her eyes, right? The moment when that proverbial switch is flipped. And then as the film goes on, she kind of goes further and further down that path, and starts to embrace, I think, that side of herself.
Yeah.
And there's a scene with Robert Miley. He's the big right hand man.
Yeah.
His character's name is Apex, and he can kind of he kind of warns her. He sees it, he's been down that road and he knows where it leads, and he tells her, it's a dangerous,
Yeah.
dangerous path to start down. And by the end of the film, we can already see that he was right.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when the script was bought off you, did you spend time on the set? Did they sort of turn to you and ask you, what do you think about this person playing this role? Did you take any kind of advisory role for the film itself?
I wouldn't say an advisory role so much as, but they were great about keeping me in the loop and keeping me posted on developments. all through the development process, even after my rewrites were finished
Mm-hmm.
and really my work was done. Um, they were still very good about communicating with me and letting me know what was happening, and I did get to visit the set when production finally got underway.
That's awesome. Now, the
Yeah.
movie has like well over 15, like close to 15,000 reviews on IMDb. They're good reviews. Does that surprise you in a good way?
In a way it does. I always said, from the time that the script sold, like movies, kind of extreme, I don't want to say exploitation, but movies like that are extremely violent often don't do that well, in terms of Rotten Tomato scores.
Yeah.
And I said from the beginning, if it can get a 50%, I'd be pretty happy with that, right? It's currently sitting at 72, so
That's
that's
awesome.
that's awesome. Yeah.
In fact, we had a little discussion with my team about Rotten Tomatoes. I'm not a big fan of Rotten Tomatoes because the whole certified fresh thing, it comes from
Hmm.
critics.
Right.
Okay, it's not really
Right.
from the fans, the people that matter.
That's right.
For
Yeah.
me, like IMDb, I'm more lean towards them because at least you have viewers who have seen the product weighing
Hmm.
in on how good they think. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. The other side of that is, in some cases, those the audience scores can be kind of review bombed, if you will, if for
Yeah,
whatever reason, they decide to turn on a project, right? So it's hard to really put a lot of stock in any of those kind of
yeah,
metrics. Really, I'm a believer in just seeing it for myself and
exactly.
deciding, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Not everyone's going to love it. Not everyone's going to hate it. There are going to be a lot of people in between. See it for yourself. If it sounds interesting to you, check it out. Uh,
Exactly.
Now, as a writer, where would you say, well, first of all, is horror the only interest you have when it comes to writing screenplays? Is that where you feel you excel the most?
Yeah, I think, that's what I'm mostly interested in. I also I'm a big science fiction fan as well. Um, but, it's science fiction so tough,
Yeah,
to get going, unless you can come up with a really brilliant concept that you can keep the budget really low. And you know what I mean? It's hard to get traction with a sci-fi spec script. It's a little easier to get people to look at a horror script, I think. And really, at the end of the day, that's where my passion is. That's what I love, and that's primarily what I'm interested in writing.
when you saw the final product in Becky, were you happy with how the filmmakers, stayed true to your to your script? Were you satisfied with that?
I was thrilled. Because I was so nervous going into it. I really, I didn't know what to expect. I was like, my God, just please, please be good. and and when they finally they sent me a screener a few months before the film was released, and it was actually the original cut got an NC-17. They had to cut a few frames out of a couple of scenes to bring it down to an R.
Yeah,
Um,
that
but
last
yeah,
that ending, that kill with that lawnmower, man.
yeah,
Ooh,
I
that
think
was
that I think that might have been a second or two longer in the cut that I saw originally, but it's funny how it just that's all it takes is just lose a few frames
yeah,
and they're good to go. It's an R. So,
yeah, yeah. Now the
but
story is told a lot in flashbacks. What was the reasoning for approaching this story in that fashion?
the the original script it opened with a flashback as well, but it was a little different. The opening scene and the ending scenes that you see in the film were those weren't mine. That was added after my work was done on it. And I think they wanted to kind of establish a bit of a duality between Becky
Yeah.
and Dominic, and and kind of show the sort of similarities between the institutions that they're a part of, at that point in time. Um, and other than that, I think there were a couple of flashbacks concerning her mom, while she was,
Yeah.
in the hospital with cancer. And just to it was another piece of the puzzle, I guess, that informed that, the Becky's character, and exactly where she was at that point.
Exactly. Now, you as a writer, when you're creating these characters, you know exactly in your mind what they look like. You're creating them. When it came to the casting of the movie, did they achieve what? At least this is not neither right nor wrong, but did they come close to what you had envisioned of what these guys and girl look like?
In the case of Becky, 100%, and actually, uh, they were pretty adamant right out of the gate. As soon as they purchased the script, we see Lulu Wilson for this part, and to which I was,
She
I
was
was
great.
oh, I was already a fan of hers, from Ouija, Origin of
Mm-hmm.
Evil, and Annabelle Creation. She was, already at that point, and she was 11 years old at that point when she first got the script. A bona fide scream queen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was thrilled with that news, and to find out, in fairly quickly, that they had gotten the script to her, and that she read it and she loved it and she wanted to do it. That was fantastic. Um, as for Dominic, for the villain character, um, you know,
He was an
Kevin
evil
James,
bastard, man.
he's Kevin James is definitely not who I was imagining when I
Mm-hmm.
wrote the character. And when they were when casting had started for that, this was quite a bit later, quite a bit further down the line. Names like Kurt Russell and
Wow.
Mel Gibson and Jeffrey
Yeah.
Dean Morgan were being thrown around, right? And I
Jeffrey
was like,
maybe, but Kurt Russell, I don't see that. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know these guys. They all had the gravitas, I guess, that they were looking for, and I could see any one of them playing a villain type character like that. And then lo and behold, after not long after that, I get a call from the producer, and he's like, we have our Dominic, and you're never going to guess who it is. And he's like, are you sitting down? I was like, okay. I sat down. I was like, who is it? He says, Simon Pegg. I said, Simon Pegg. And I had to stop. And I'm a huge fan of Simon Pegg. I love all of his films, and really I was just kind of blown away that he had actually read the script and wanted to be a part of it. And so I certainly couldn't see him in that role, because
Mm-hmm.
I'd never seen him do anything like that before. But I was all for it, man. And as it turned out, and then not long after that, they cast Kevin James
Mm-hmm.
as Becky's dad in
Yeah.
the film. And as it turned out, Simon had to back out, because he had a scheduling thing with another project or something, and Kevin asked if he could read for the Dominic role, and the rest is history. He impressed the people that he had to impress, with his audition, and I think I was on set pretty early. I was there day two, and when he came out with the head shaved, and the tattoos all over it, and then he starts delivering these lines, and he's got this really kind of understated, cool, nuanced sort of performance. I was just floored, man. I was like, wow,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
he was amazing. Now, there are several questions in this movie that linger. The first is, throughout the movie, the key. Okay, and these
Right.
guys are willing to kill and do whatever it takes, and even the fiancés ask, what is it worth it? Is it worth
Right.
it for a stupid key? What does that thing even open? Uh,
Yeah.
when you were doing the story, was the key just not relevant, just a, sort of a motivation for them doing what they're doing and not critical to the story, or was it the complete opposite of that?
No, it was more so just to drive the plot. The key evolved a lot, from the time I finished my last rewrite on the script to the time the movie was produced. So I can't say a whole lot about the key because I'm very very hopeful that we're going to get a sequel out of this. But yeah, it originally the key was not. It was a little bit more, at least in my version of the script, um, just presumably to treasure or money or
Yeah.
something like that, right? And it became in the final version of the script. It's kind of presented as this big mysterious looking thing, right? So yeah, I'm fingers crossed
See what?
we get
See.
to reveal that and find out what the deal is with it.
Well, I love that in movies where there's, not every question needs to be answered. There
Right.
is some stuff that should be left up to the viewer's imagination, and I think that was done with the key. Now, another question when it comes to Becky that is on a lot of the fans' minds is why Becky did not confess to her killing the people who invaded her home, killed her dad, where, she was perfectly justified, but chose not to confess it, not to say that she did it. From the writer's point of view, tell us why that is.
I think by the end of the film and after all that she's been through, she's kind of she's started down that path towards becoming the monster that Apex warned her she could become. And it's possible that a part of her enjoyed it, right? And so and maybe she feels that her work's not done.
So I'm not going to ask you if you have it written or not. I'm not going to ask you that question. But if you do get a call saying, we want you to write the sequel to Becky, uh, do you have a vision of what what happens to Becky after the film ends?
Yeah, I've definitely got my own kind of vision for where the story goes next, and whether or not a sequel actually happens, whether or not I'm involved in it. All of these things are kind of still up in the air and remain to be seen. But yeah, I've definitely got my own feelings on where the story goes after this.
And it's very. I'd love to see a sequel, and just for the movies is called Becky, just for the character to see, this 13-year-old girl who suffers this traumatic incident. Her reaction to it is not what you would assume a normal 13-year-old's reaction. She finds out. I think a lot of this story, like I said in the beginning of this interview, there's a lot of undertone in the story, and one of them is a 13-year-old girl being forced to discover a side of herself, maybe sooner than she was ready to discover. And like you mentioned, she enjoyed it. And I think
Right.
that really plays it. It's fascinating. Was that your intention? Or was it something that just sort of fell into place as you were writing it?
No, I think that was the intent from the beginning. That in order for her to take it to the places that she does, some part of her, some element of her psyche has to be enjoying it, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So I definitely wanted to explore that. That was one of the key things that interested me about the idea.
Now, with
And
horror, we have all these different types of horror, and this is definitely a dark horror movie just because of Becky and what she does. Again, going back, was that the intent from the beginning to make this a very dark psychological horror movie or screenplay that got turned into a movie?
yeah, definitely. But first and foremost, as a horror fan, I respond. As a fan, I respond most to movies that are
Yeah.
fun to watch, and that was my primary goal with the script. And it's super dark and super gruesome and all of that. You know. But it had to be fun. It had to be fun
Mm-hmm.
to watch, and it had to provide a certain level of catharsis, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
from seeing her exact her revenge on these all these scumbags, right?
Yeah. So tell us, from a writer's perspective, in one of the most popular genres out there right now, being horror, how difficult is it to come up with new and unique ideas? Since so much has been done, is it really difficult?
It's a challenge. It's definitely, yeah. There's we've seen everything, right?
Yeah.
Really. Um, so as a writer now, the challenge is to uh, at least put a new spin on something that we've seen before, maybe.
Yeah.
In the case of Becky, there are a few influences at work there. There's a little bit of home invasion style 70s last house on the left kind of
Mm-hmm.
extreme horror. There's some action, kind of cat and mouse, Die Hard elements about it. And there's a little bit of Home Alone in there too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
With with the character, with the hero. Um, it's that's part of the fun for me, is to try and find things that I respond to in other pieces of work, or in and just find a new angle, and to
Put a different spin
some
on it. Yeah.
exactly. It's just, yeah, come at it from a different point of view, and see where that takes you.
So, if you go back to when you first started getting really serious about writing, who would you say were your inspirations when it comes to writing, and especially in horror? Is there any writers that you really like their work?
There's in terms of filmmakers, I was definitely John Carpenter, definitely Sam Raimi. Those were the kinds of movies that I tended to gravitate towards. Um, I also enjoy um, you know anything that's legitimately creepy and scary, and that sort of thing too. So, but yeah, I think those were two of my biggest influences for sure.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So now that you have a screenplay that's been turned into a movie, uh, do you feel like you've made connections now to, let's say you do have more scripts and you want people in Hollywood to read them? Have doors been opened up for you now?
Yes and no. It's never easy, right? It's so hard to get traction on anything. I've got a couple of projects that are moving forward now that probably wouldn't be otherwise, right?
Yeah.
So it definitely makes a difference if you've got something that you can point to and and say, here's an
Here you go.
example of what I do, right?
Yeah, it's like an author being published. Hey, this is my
Exactly.
screenplay. It's been turned into a movie. Now,
Right.
Becky is available on Showtime. Do you know, did it originally get distributed by Showtime or did it land? Who was the original distributor? Do you know?
The original distributor on it is a company called Quiver,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they teamed with Redbox
Yeah,
on distribution. So I think Quiver handled the American distribution, and I might be wrong about this, but I think Redbox maybe overseas. But they were the distributors, and it it was released at the height of the pandemic
mm-hmm.
um, in summer of last year, when none of the studios were putting anything out, and most of the theaters were
Oh,
closed,
yeah.
and so and it was supposed to have its debut at Tribeca in New York last year, and I
That
had
never
my
happened.
flight booked and had my hotel booked, and I was super pumped about it, and then all of a sudden this COVID-19 thing hit,
The whole world
and
changed.
the whole world changed, and of course New York City was the epicenter of it.
Yeah.
So you know, so that didn't happen, but it was after that that I think Quiver and Redbox picked up the distribution rights and decided to go ahead with a digital release. Just a couple of months later,
Yeah.
and and as it turned out, it got a lot more attention
Yeah.
as a result of that, because there was nothing else out there. The studios weren't putting out anything new, and somebody had the brilliant idea to release it at the drive-ins, because the drive-ins were enjoying a renaissance as a result of the pandemic, and it did super well there, and actually, held the top spot at the U.S. domestic box office for
Nice.
2 weekends, just thanks to the drive-in revenue, right? So
Nice. Nice.
yeah,
I
so
saw it on Showtime myself, and to let viewers know, Becky is available on of course, Showtime. So if you're a subscriber of Showtime on your cable or satellite, you have access to Showtime anywhere. You could watch it there. I think it's also available on Tubi with ads and several other places that it's available to stream free with ads as well.
I
The
think it might also be on Hulu in the U.S. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it's on Prime Video here in Canada,
Yeah, it is
and
on Amazon Prime here as well too.
is it okay?
Yeah, so it's available everywhere really. It's free, or if you don't like watching with commercials, it's available for rent or purchase. It's a great movie. It's a coming of age movie in a very horror way. You won't
It's a
be dis
twisted coming of age story. Yeah,
It's a very twisted coming of age story. Nick, I want to thank you so much for being our guest tonight and sharing with us just your thoughts on how Becky came to be. It's a great movie. Personally, I would love to see a sequel. I would love for you to write that sequel and
you and
to,
me both.
yeah, for us to have it on the big screen. Thank you so much. Any final thoughts you want to share before we go?
No, thanks so much, man, for having me. It was really fun.
No,
Yeah,
thank you.
we're
Thank you. It was
we're
my honor to
cheers.
cheers, absolutely. And my producer just chimed in. It is available on Hulu here in the United States.
Perfect,
So there you guys
excellent.
go. Anywhere you want to watch it, Becky's available. Again, thank you to Nick Morris, writer of Becky. Thank you to our viewers for tuning in. Everyone stay safe. On behalf of Nick and myself, stay walking. Good night, everybody.